Okay, so what we're going to do here today is we're going to take a new idea on an old theme that you've seen on YouTube 100 times. And that is the basic corn recipe that is just sugar, corn, and yeast primarily, and water. But there's a bit of a complication to that, and we're gonna tweak this just a bit and make everything more simpler. Now, nobody wants to deal with corn, not as a kernel form. And the last corn mash you saw me do was made out of cornmeal. So we're going to play along with that theme, and we're also going to change up one other thing. The sugar that you see me use is no longer on my shelf. I'm not ever using ordinary white sugar again. So, because the white sugar shine is just blah. You can use other things and get a much cleaner rum. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to use anything that'll give us a rum, and we're going to add to that. So what we have here is we have raw sugar, we have molasses, we have this coconut palm sugar, brown sugar, anything that you can use to make a decent rum. Go ahead and replace the average sugar that you see in lots of other recipes with that. Takes care of that in. Now, as far as the corn goes, personally, I do not want to go down to a feed store or any other place and get whole kernel corn or cracked corn and deal with it. So, use other things. Use corn mix. Use taco shells made out of corn. If you could go down to Taco Bell, and I was just there like 2 nights ago, and one woman had a big box, and she was throwing all these taco shells, and she was throwing them all out because they were all cracked. They're not going to sell broken taco shells. So you could go down to Taco Bell and ask to purchase their broken taco shells, probably at a very reduced rate. They might do it, they might not. It doesn't hurt to ask. So, 2 more things we have. We have corn in a can, and we have cornflakes. America's breakfast for, I don't know, the last 50 years or more. The thing about cornflakes is it's corn, and if you look at the ingredients, milled corn, sugar, malt, flour. That's about it. This is perfect. And the little extra sugar content is not going to kill it, because we're going to ferment that anyways. So we're going to take a couple of these things from each end. We're going to take a couple of these items from the sugar end, and we're going to take a couple items from the corn end, and we're going to combine them and make a mash. Now, one other thing I wanted to get to. If you're just starting out, and you're just playing around with your still, and I've said this before, and I want you to distill cheap vodka or whiskey. Now, if you're brand new to your still, the reason I want you to distill cheap vodka or whiskey is because the cuts have already been made for you, and it's a no-brainer. Just put it in one end, watch it come out the other end, and learn how your still works. Now, I've also said that you could add flavorings to this and see what new kind of thing that you get. Along that line, you could do the same thing. Cheap bottle of vodka and the corn, and combine these into your still and redistill it. Nothing wrong with that. And you should get a corn flavor coming out of your still that lets you experiment. It lets you find out what's going on. So enough about that. So now we're going to make this mash here, and we're going to use 2 things from each end, the corn end and the sugar end. So I'm going to use brown sugar, and I'm going to use this raw sugar. And we need about 4 or 5 pounds of sugar for every 5 gallons of wash or mash. So we got 2 pounds here, and we have 2 pounds here, and that'll work for me. I could add another little bit of that. That's more raw sugar. And for our corn, I'm going to use these. So, getting started, we'll just, oh yes, first we're going to activate our yeast. We're going to activate our yeast. Take just a little warm water, a little sugar, and a little dry bread yeast. I could add some more. There we go. About 2-3 teaspoons, tablespoons. It doesn't make a huge difference. Okay. We got that started. Now, put in our raw sugar. We will put in our brown sugar. And we will put in our corn flakes. Now there's no set amount of corn that I'm going to use. We're just going to throw some in. What is this? 12-ounce box. And we'll take a couple of cans of the corn. Now, if you're using the canned corn, go ahead and use everything, juice and all, because corn flavor is what we want and is what we're trying to get out of here. So every drop of corn flavor that you can come up with, you go ahead and use it. Now then, we got that in there, and now we're going to fill this up with warm water. And I'm going to fill it right to about here because we need a little room for foaming. Our cap is going to come down to here. 5-gallon mark is right about here, and we're right here. So we have a little room for foaming. Now we'll stir this up good. Now, if you want to do this with the enzymes and convert the starches into sugar, I don't know how that will play out. As of yet, I'm unsure of the starch content in the corn flakes and the canned corn. However, if you wanted to add cornstarch to the mix, of course that'll work just fine too. But what we're doing here is we're just taking the basic idea that you've seen on YouTube 50 times at least, and we're dumbing it down. We're making it simpler, and we're making it better. We're making it better taste-wise because we're taking the white sugar out of there, and we're making it simpler because we're using corn from other sources. Oh look, our yeast is ready to go in. Okay, and now we will let this sit and see how it does. Okay, so here we are the next day, next morning. It's 7 in the morning, and might be hard to see, but we do have some bubbling action going on here. So this is fermenting. I was a little worried about it at first. Didn't know if it was fermenting or not, so I let it sit overnight. And lo and behold, it is fermenting. So now we will let this sit for a week. Maybe 2. We'll check it after a week. If it needs to sit longer, we'll let it sit for 2 weeks. And then we will have a mash. Okay, so now to keep this warm, I've put it in the bathroom, and I keep a heater in here all the time with the doors closed. Keep this room warm, because I personally keep my heat down in hours that I'm not using the heat. So when I go to bed, my smart thermostat is set at 60, and there's a space heater in my room keeping me warm. And then in the morning before I wake up, heater kicks in and brings it up to 70. Then when I leave, the heat goes down to 50 because there's nobody here, and then again kicks on before I get home from work. So, you know, if I have to use the bathroom in the middle of the night, the bathroom is warm no matter what. So I put my jug in here with this heater, and it stays nice and warm in here. Another thing you could do is put your container next to a heater vent and then wrap it with a blanket, or you can use an old winter coat and give just enough space between the blanket and the heater to allow the air to blow up into that and keep it warm that way. So now it's been 2 weeks. Let's see what we've got. Oh yeah, that looks very nice. Everything has settled to the bottom. It had 2 weeks to set because I put very little yeast in here this time around, and the fact that some parts of the house are colder than others. So I gave this plenty of time to work. Let's take a spoon and see what we got here. That tastes surprisingly real close to beer. I mean, real close to beer. Not much difference at all. Wow. I mean, I really can't believe how close that is to an actual off-the-shelf beer that you could buy. We still have a little sweetness to it. Not much. So we probably had more than enough sugar in there. Or we could probably use a little bit better yeast. But we're ready to go. So now, now what you've usually seen me do is take this and drain it and strain it. I'm not going to do that this time. I'm going to try to leave everything that's on the bottom. And when we get to that, we'll worry then. Okay, so now the rest of this, I got it emptied down to about, okay, I can point to it, down to about here. The rest of it's just going to go into a spaghetti strainer and my old friend cheesecloth. Oh, there we go. And now I'll just let the rest of this, I'll just let it drain for a few minutes, and then maybe give it a gentle squeeze, and then toss the rest of it away. But if you had farm animals, you could still feed this to like your chickens and your hogs and cows. But you can just throw it away. Yeah, we'll give it a gentle squeeze. There's a lot of alcohol in there after all. Yeah, we'll call that good. Alright, we're all set now. And there's our leftover mash. The other stuff came out perfectly clear because we just let it settle and then we scoop some out. And this is a little cloudy, it's got the yeast in it, or you can either, it's good enough for distilling, so once you get one run done, you got some more left over, just go ahead and run it perfectly fine. Now after you've collected your final distillate, it's up to you to decide. Do you want to age it or not? Well, you can age it if you want. You can use like the Jack Daniels whiskey barrel smoking chips like you always see me use. You could try one of the other smoking chips like apple or cherry or even pecan, and experiment. I'll be planning on doing some experimenting with wood chips later on. But for me, this is what I'm going to do right here. Leave it just the way it is, because this I want to be the most like backwoods moonshine that I can get. So this is going to stay just like this. This is done. This is the final product. Now, whatever proof you want it at, that's up to you too. Me, I always keep mine around 100%, or excuse me, 100 proof. Reason being, well, see, I want it strong. I want it strong that you know that it didn't come off the shelf, but I also want it light enough that people aren't afraid to try it. So that's what I'm doing. This is not all of it. This is just a sample of it, just for demonstration. So this is what I'm going to do. This is my final product here. So the rest, whatever you do, is up to you.